We'll never give it up to another nation. This a we we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a me. My name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the help and the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This a me. My name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the help and the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation.
Greetings and morning. It's Sunday review time where we make sense of the news at the only news review talk show in Belize here at XTV, simulcasting on Creme Radio, live streaming at XTV Belize YouTube channel and XTV Belize Facebook channel. I am the producer and host, YaYa Marin Coleman. Our co-host is from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Breddah Mutota. Since 2025, he's been the co-host. I'm sure you're familiar with this. Absolutely genuine, brilliant, wise Breddah. Morning, Breddah Ako. How the morning?
Morning, Sister YaYa. Good morning to our listening audience. And once again, we welcome everyone listening to our program this morning.
Yes, it's Sunday, June 29th, 2025, and it's day 299 of United Black Association for Development Educational Foundation Natural Hair campaign, holding the government of Belize accountable, specifically the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Labor, to enforce the Constitution of Belize so that Belizean students and employees' human rights could stop being violated. One, students being denied access to education because they refuse to adhere at times to European colonial hairstyles. And the same for employees in the public and private sector. So it's day 299. And on the usual lineup, it's an hour and a half show. In the first half hour, Breddah Ako focuses on Caribbean news. In the region, we had originally had two guests scheduled, but only one will be with us today. And that guest will join us at after Breddah Ako starts his Caribbean news report. She's already here. She's just not on camera. Okay, and we'll introduce her when she comes on camera. Breddah Ako, what's going on in the Caribbean? Breddah Ako, when you do Caribbean news, you just look for English-speaking Caribbean because people at the talk loud. I can calm myself down. I'm too excited.
No.
So oftentimes, I
look at different. I look at Cuba, Puerto Rico. I look at across the Caribbean, Venezuela. Yeah.
I don't know how, because of our colonized church-state education system, when we say the Caribbean, I am pretty sure a number of Belizeans, for example, nothing at Haiti, nothing at Cuba, nothing at Puerto Rico, and I think at Caribbean countries that are not English speaking, like French speakers or Dutch speakers or Spanish speakers, who make up a part of the Caribbean. And then because they divide the Caribbean between the Eastern Caribbean and the Western Caribbean, but you don't confirm for it. When you say the Caribbean, you didn't
keep going in and out for some reason. Yeah. So yeah, what I'm saying, what people mistake what we call the West Indies or the Caribbean. So I don't look at just the territories that wrongly called the West Indies. So I look at the widest Caribbean possible, bordering Venezuela, parts of Central America, the English-speaking Caribbean, and the French and Dutch-speaking Caribbean. Antilles, lesser and greater. So yeah. So on this morning, our first piece would be out of Barbados, which was just published June 24th, and the headline is, "On the Global Stage, Prime Minister Mayor Motley commands standing ovations." And the article is a disturbing article, but also part of what is happening in the Caribbean. So I will begin by reading the article. She has become one of the most recognizable voices in the international conversation on climate justice and financial reform, particularly through her signature proposal, the Bridgetown Initiative. The call for reparations for slavery and a new development deal for the Global South has earned her respect across Africa and acclaim from international institutions. She has graced the cover of Time magazine, been profiled in Vogue, and accepted the prestigious Zayed Award for Human Fraternity. At climate summits and global fora, Motley speaks with moral clarity and oratorical brilliance. And they're speaking of Mia Motley of Barbados. She is without question one of the most influential leaders to emerge from the Caribbean in this century. But back home, the applause is drowned out by gunfire. This is the quieter image of Barbados, one not found on postcards or conference stages. It's the image of a 166 square mile island where the promise of safety, opportunity, and stability is being chipped away by a rising tide of violent gun crime. As the Prime Minister builds a legacy abroad, many Barbadians are left asking, who is protecting the legacy and lives of people at home? This international image of Barbados, found on Instagram reels of sun-drenched beaches and smiling locals, is a stark contrast to the nation's news headlines of living in fear and gunfire shakes 6 roads that now appear on a near daily basis in the news. Together, they tell the story of a country gripped by a domestic crisis, one that no filter or drone shot can conceal. The surge in gun and gang-related violence has shaken the country's sense of security. In 2024, Barbados recorded its highest number of criminal incidents in over a decade, with the Barbados police force citing a troubling increase in firearm-related offenses. The most disturbing trend is the weaponry itself. High-powered firearms, often untraceable, are now in circulation, raising questions not just about policing, but national security. The crisis came to a head on June 22nd, 2025, when 4 gunmen launched a coordinated shooting spree with large automatic weapons across 2 districts in St. Michael. Gunshots damaged buildings and vehicles with stray bullets entering homes and spent shells scattered across the road. In response, Commissioner of Police Richard Boyce issued a chilling assessment. The violence, he said, had reached the level of domestic terrorism. Gangs are now declared open on our society, he told the nation. His words echoed a broader sentiment that something fundamental is breaking. Just hours after the deadly shooting spree, the Deputy Prime Minister, speaking at a party meeting, confirmed what many already felt. Barbados is at a tipping point, she said, noting that of the 25 homicides reported so far this year, she personally knew at least 20 of the victims. This loss is no longer abstract, it is personal, painful, and close. The surge in violence does not exist in a vacuum. It reflects, in part, the same inequality that Prime Minister Motley so passionately critiques on the world stage. But in Barbados, that inequality is felt in a more immediate and painful form. And so this is coming out of Barbados, which was considered by many to be a bastion of stability in the region. And unfortunately, we are witnessing escalation of crime and particularly gun violence. This pattern is in Trinidad, it is in Jamaica, St. Kitts, which at one point was the murder capital, highest, I think, in the world, if not the hemisphere. The next article concerns what is happening with the US and visa requirements out of Trinidad. And it states that visa applicants must set social media profile. And again, this is Caribbean-wide. Trinidad and Tobago students applying for student visas in the US must keep their social media profiles set to public or risk having their applications denied. In an update a couple of days ago on social media, the U.S. Embassy in Trinidad and Tobago said the measure is in effect immediately. And the statement is effective immediately. If you are applying for an FM or 1 non-immigrant visa, you're requested to adjust the privacy settings to public on your personal social media accounts. This is to facilitate the vetting necessary to establish your identity and admissibility to the United States. The adjudication of visa application is critically important to the national security and public safety of the United States. Since 2019, the United States has required visa applicants to provide social media identifiers on immigrant and non-immigrant visas. The directive also applies to other CARICOM states. In March, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said over 300 student visas has been revoked over pro-Palestine activity. And this speaks for itself in the sense that the U.S. is becoming more and more interventionist, not only in our politics, but in our personal lives. And so that is their statement on the visa issue. Next issue is the question, or the next headline is the question of the Cuban medical missions. And the headline is an unusual request from the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights about Cuban medical brigades. The U.S. continues in its attempt to overthrow the Cuban Revolution. This time it attacks the Cuban medical brigades. An unusual request from the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights about Cuban medical brigades that operate worldwide and provide much needed help has roiled countries in the Caribbean and the Americas. In a letter sent to the U.S., a letter sent by the U.S., the Commission asked members of the OAS, the Organization of American States, for details including whether they have an agreement with Cuba for medical missions, whether those workers have labor and union rights, and information about any labor complaints. This is seen by many as just another move by the U.S. to weaponize international institutions in the name of human rights. This was an unprecedented move sent Francesca Emanuel, Senior International Policy Associate at the Center for Economic and Policy Research in Washington. It is deeply troubling. Cuba has more than 22,000 doctors working in more than 50 countries, including the Caribbean and the Americas, according to its government. A breakdown for the region was not available. The Commission, supposedly an independent body of the OAS, is heavily funded by the US, and it said it plans to analyze the data collected as well as offer recommendations given the persistence of reports of rights violations. Many are asking, why haven't the OAS Human Rights Commission asked similar questions about the Bukele incarceration and abuses of prisoners in a supposed crackdown on gangs in El Salvador? The letter was sent to the US, to the OAS, after Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced visa restrictions in February for Cuban or foreign government officials accused of involvement in Cuba's medical missions, which he called forced labor. According to Emmanuel, the timing is really suspicious, noting that the information requested falls squarely within the member states' sovereign decision-making. And this is a distortion of the role of the organization. Silence has prevailed since the Human Rights Commission issued its statement on May 24th in a letter to OAS member states and was given 30 days to respond. Out of the region, Prime Minister of St. Vincent, Ralph Gonsalves, said he's waiting for a regional approach. He said in a phone interview that he would raise the issue during a meeting of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. According to Gonsalves, there are no human rights issues involved here. He said, noting that St. Vincent is party to several international labor conventions, and they have not been breached and will not be breached. He said Cuban doctors run the hemodialysis center in St. Vincent that provides free care for 64 patients at a rate of $5 million a year. Without the Cubans, that dialysis center will be closed. When asked if he's worried about the potential restrictions, he said he's not and will meet with Rubio to have a discussion. The Caribbean, according to some, is divided on this issue and has not developed a unanimous response to what some consider a threat to regional and national sovereignty. In Guyana, Foreign Minister Hugh Todd told the Associated Press that the government plans to amend its payment and recruitment system involving Cuban medical professionals. He said their main concern is to make sure we are compliant with international labor laws. However, Guyanese Vice President Barrett Jackdale said the government wants to ensure that the conditions of work here don't run afoul of requirements set by the United States. Jackdale further said Guyana depends heavily on the U.S. for support, especially given an ongoing and bitter border dispute with neighboring Venezuela. Some Caribbean leaders have said they would risk losing U.S. visas, noting that Cuban medical professionals provide much needed help in the region. And so this is a part of the continued falsehoods about the Cuban medical brigade and other anti-Cuban propaganda. And one of the things we'd like to state at the end of this report is that on July 26, 2025, there will be an interview with representatives of a project on this program, Sunday Review. This would be on July 20th, in commemoration of July 26th. They have initiated what is called a counter-narrative, what is being propagated by the U.S. State Department. So look out for that event on July 26th, and also the interview on July 20th on Sunday Review. The other headline is from Haiti. The ongoing situation in Haiti is a terrible situation, and the U.S. continues to intervene and to apply pressure on the people of Haiti. And the headline is Trump administration decided Haiti is safe enough to end temporary protections for its nationals in the United States. The Trump administration is putting an end to Haiti's temporary protected status designation, dealing yet another devastating blow to roughly 500,000 Haitian nationals, some of whom have lived in the United States for more than a decade. The Department of Homeland Security said on Friday that the conditions in Haiti have improved and Haitians no longer meet the conditions for temporary protected status, which grants deportation protections and work permits to people from countries experiencing turmoil. Although the current TPS designation on August 3rd, the termination itself will officially take effect on Tuesday, September 13th. The environmental situation in Haiti has improved enough, according to the U.S., that it is safe for Haitian citizens to return home. It is unclear how the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, in consultation with the State Department, reached such a conclusion, according to a former diplomat from the U.S. This week, the agency also urged U.S. citizens to depart Haiti as soon as possible or be prepared to shelter in place for an extended period. On Thursday, Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Orlando questioned the lack of action at the OAS regarding the gang and the armed gangs crisis in Haiti. This situation in Haiti continues to be monitored, and a number of people are very disturbed at the designation of Haiti as a place that is safe for people to return when armed gangs continue to roam the streets of Haiti, killing with impunity and terrorizing the population. But this is the policy of the Trump administration. And on that note, Sister YaYa, I end our news report for today.
Thanks, Brother Akko. We tend to have you just read the report and then we get conversation. And I really think we should, starting next week, spend more time in this half hour for analyze the news report so that people get the sense why what happened in the Caribbean relevant to for we lives. So now people go apply for a US visa. And I mean that one straight violation. But then you want to find that a lot of people want just telling people yes, and I don't think they even understand what that mean. And not just about like when something public, who all have access to your information, your pictures, how they could use it. And then there's a slim chance you even get a US visa. Can't know we go pay them people bag of money, and most of them most of the people that don't get a visa, and just keep the money. So that for really ask, and then going back to the first story, make I think of brother Darius Figuera and what he shared about transnational organized crime as relates to that kind of heavy armory. And I, and I know this is another thing. When you say like a political leader, they get all the pet and pamper from the global north, especially for me, that one red flag. And I take her from the sister that she's very eloquent and knowledgeable. But if somebody asks me for describe her, I'd say she's a woman of the hegemony. I know say she genuinely look after the interests of the everyday people, which are the majority of the people of the Caribbean. And the rest of the Caribbean leaders and just licky licky. Anyways, that's my 2 cents for the Caribbean report to the brother Echo.
Yeah, the danger with that thing with the visas, or one of the many dangers, is that it is a violation of people's privacy. So, for example, if a young person were to come on a webinar we have on, let's say, militarization in the Caribbean, and the US policy is criticized, then there's a possibility you could be denied a visa. So it is so dangerous on so many levels in that it is intimidating people into not saying anything anti-American. It's like the policy that is now implemented relative to Israel. If you criticize the genocide in Gaza, you are branded anti-Semitic. And for that simple reason, you could be denied a visa to the United States. It's a very dangerous situation. It is an attack on democracy, on human rights, and it's ironic that it is these attacks have been used a lot of smoke screens, like what is happening with Cuba. They are using the Cuban medical brigades, using human rights to attack it. When we in the Caribbean need these Cuban doctors, yeah, our doctors sometimes are trained. The US recruit them. Our teachers are being recruited to go up in the US because the US is not training doctors in the way that they should, because they're spending billions and trillions on the military. So it's a very dangerous situation that human rights, our sovereignty as individual states, as a region, and our leaders are just going along, not even raising a murmur about some of these policies, and in any significant way. So we wait and see what is going to happen. But all this is part of the U.S. hegemony and the imperialist agenda.
Let me see if our guest is now available to come on. We have Dr. Maziki Thame from Jamaica, who's a senior lecturer in the Department of Government, UWI Mona. Sister Doc, are you available to turn your camera on now? If she doesn't turn it on, then Brother Akko and I will continue speaking. And then she'll come on after the break. Okay, she's not on. Okay, so yes, Brother Akko, we could continue speaking specifically about why, that my Brother Akko idea, um, militarization in the Caribbean. Why that conversation now? What that got to do with people that's to try hustler, get something for you to stay dry in this hurricane season?
Why no? Why no? Why is it important now? Because
Yes.
the Caribbean is plagued with all kinds of economic and social problems. And rather than our leaders implement policy to address those things, they are not doing that. Now, we are using, like, for example, in El Salvador and recently in Jamaica and Guyana, they instituted states of emergencies in Guyana and Trinidad, and in El Salvador, there's a state of exception. And in Panama, they suspended constitutional rights. In Panama, the case was workers were protesting the fact that they were losing their medical benefits after the company, Chiquita or Dole, I think, fired 5,000 or 6,000 people. In Jamaica, it was supposedly about crime, and therefore they issued a state of emergency. In Guyana, there was a situation in which a young woman was killed, and the people were not satisfied with the approach of the state, and particularly the police, in terms of dealing with this crime. And there was a protest. So what did they do? They put a state of emergency. Similarly, in Trinidad, just before the elections, there was a state of emergency, which to supposedly handle crime. Now, to understand crime, there are three basic, if you want to call it, bases of crime and the escalation of crime, if you want to call it that. One, economic inequality, which is what, when I read the report on what is happening in Barbados, they cited as one of the prime sources of crime, economic inequality. Another thing is social dysfunction, okay? In which, because of economic inequality and because of our history of enslavement and so on, we have become socially dysfunctional. And the third is what you may call cultural alienation and a cultural vacuum. These three are critical bases of why crime exists in a society. And there's some other supplemental things, but basically, if you have a culture that is disruptive and a culture that is not indigenous and productive to the population, and social dysfunction and economic inequality, you are creating the conditions for crime to exist. Now, these three things I told you about there are policy remedies for these things. Right? For example, the economic inequality. There are policy remedies for these things. Adjust your economic system, right? Make it more egalitarian. We are not doing that. So when people revolt because of the failure of policy, the inadequacy of the economic system, rather than address these through policy measures, what is happening? We are now seeing military approaches to solving these problems. The people's genuine actions, genuine demand for equality and for the right to live, basically, And what one has to understand the origin of this thing, right? The police is supposed to be a civilian force. When I grew up in Trinidad, the police had a little baton and they will walk the streets and and they will, and it was a civilian force. That's what the police was, right? In the 1980s and in the 1990s, and even in the US and in Britain, they consider the British Bobby in the community. In the 1980s and the 1990s, the advent of the wars that the US waged in Vietnam and some of those other wars, there was a surplus of military supplies, guns, military equipment, tanks, and so on. In order for the military to continue to demand more and more money in the defense budget, they decided to donate military equipment to the police. So there began a militarization of policing in the United States. And so rather than the police being a civil force, the police became a paramilitary force. This is why you watch the TV and you see SWAT. And these people are dressed like soldiers, storming places, And this model of policing, the US has marketed across the world, right? There is no other place, and that's a lab. Israel is a lab for a lot of these things. in which they test all kinds of weapons against the Palestinians who are struggling for the right to own their state and for the right to live. And these models now are being sold and propagated throughout the world. And unfortunately, we in the Caribbean are now adopting these very models of policing. So we are moving away from the civilian model of policing to the paramilitary model of policing. With increasing economic inequality in the Caribbean, with the increasing social dysfunction as a result of this economic inequality, more and more we are seeing the paramilitarization of the police. In addition to that, something we discussed earlier off camera, once social revolts happened in the Caribbean, like in 1970, for example, when the Black Power movement occurred in Trinidad, we saw our police officers being sent to the United Kingdom, to places in New York, in the School of the Americas, for training in what is called counter-revolutionary or counter-terrorist methods. So in other words, genuine revolts by the population for betterment is seen as a threat to the state rather than an opportunity for them to solve their problem. And so our police officers are being trained in a lot of these schools, right, as in paramilitary methodologies in terms of dealing with the population.
Thanks, Brother Akka. That was really relatable and an excellent foundation for further the conversation about militarization in the Caribbean for the next hour. Remember, Sunday Review is where we make sense of the news. And even though with a focus on militarization in the Caribbean, we get to experience firsthand militarization in Israel, Palestine, Iran, Ukraine, Russia. Those are the stories that dominate the international media. They might train or leave it about Africa on the continent, but more so those other countries that I just mentioned, and all of this is relevant to we living in the Caribbean. So we're going ahead and take our first break, and then when we come back, we're going to continue the conversation, militarization in the Caribbean. Sunday Review, News Review Talk Show. This is how power makes sense of the news. Break time.
Imagine getting rewards for your spending. Smart prepaid customers countrywide, it's time to level up with Smart Gains. Smart Gains are exclusive, limited time offers sent straight to your phone. We're talking irresistible rewards. You'll actually want extra credit, bonus data, and exclusive perks, all tailored to you. Because at Smart, we've always got your back. Don't miss out on rewards made just for you. Smart Gains, Smart Savings, Smart You. Smart, bringing people together.
I'm Randall Friesen and I manage Westville Produce, better known as Granny's Foods. That's our main brand. So we offer high quality grains, beans, rice, and we also offer corn chips made from 100% locally grown corn. We saw a need for high quality locally produced products. A lot of the best products are being exported, and we said, we need to keep some of the best products here in Belize rather than export everything. Atlantic Bank has helped us achieve our goals by providing the financing for us to be able to launch products faster than we would without the financing that they offer. We find that Atlantic Bank is very customer friendly, especially with small and medium-sized businesses. We find that Atlantic Bank is more than willing to go the extra mile. They try to understand your business. So when we go to Atlantic Bank with a certain need, we find that they try to develop a solution that will meet our specific need. I would encourage any small business owner to go to Atlantic Bank for their financial services. They're very friendly. And just overall, their service is excellent.
Come
the banquet, find your way. Engines roar at the break of day. Volvo outboard surf the waves. Castrol oil is what they crave. Live with power, feel the sound. Heavy machines shake the ground. Riding Honda, feeling proud. Rev it up and shout aloud. Feel the wind against your skin. Smell so wide, let's begin. At Banquet, where dreams ignite. Gear up and let's take flight. Kohler's power runs our towns. JCB lifts heavy pounds. Find the tools to build your dreams. Banquet's got the best machines. Grip the wheel and never slip. Feel the rush, it's time to trip. Every brand you know and love. Banquet fits you like a glove. Feel the wind against your skin. Smell so wide, let's begin. At Banquet, where dreams ignite. Gear up and let's take flight.
Banquet, equipment, parts, service. We represent quality.
In 2024, the Belizean diaspora took over Los Angeles with the first ever Belize Diaspora Summit, and you know the only thing that could be ever better than that is to do it again. Belize Diaspora Summit 2.0. This time it takes place in the state of Florida, Fort Lauderdale Board Convention Center, July 10th, the 11th, the 12th. Belizeans from the diaspora, Belizeans from home in Belize, join together. Let's do it again. 3 days, government services, clinics, business displays, kitty corner, pop-up trivias, panel discussions. There will be highlights for business mixers. There will be live performance. Racindio, Destiny Wagner is going to be there. There's going to be a live performance of Makobi. And you will have Immigration and Civil Rights Town Hall. Special guest Kenneth Gibson, interview and book reading. There will be a wind-up reception, rhythms and rum. It's happening, Belize Diaspora 2.0, Florida, Fort Lauderdale Board Convention Center. Don't miss it.
No Guatemala, Famino. This time we don't fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This time we don't fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time we don't fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to Guatemala. This time we don't fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This time we don't fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time we don't fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This time we don't fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time we don't fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This time we don't fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a GTA, we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me. My name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. So don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head and the Belize and dollar because to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a GTA, we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me. My name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. So don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head and the Belize and dollar because patriots.
Our Sunday review where we make sense of the news, live streaming at XTV Belize YouTube, XTV Belize Facebook. Join us, share the link. We have our guest with us this morning. It's Sister YaYa, Brother Akko. And we have Sister Doc Maziki Thame from Jamaica. She's a senior lecturer in the Department of Government, EWI Mona. Welcome, Sister Doc.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and hello to all of your listeners and watchers.
I see you put up your filter for your background, but your background will really look Caribbean. It's a really nice outdoor space you have there. So I liked it. But
well, I was saying, I had to come outside. I didn't know, how much you would want to see, but my family is on the indoors, and so I had to capture this space.
No problem, sis. You wrote an article in May of this year called The Militarization of Democracy. Where is Jamaica heading? What inspired that piece?
I didn't just have an academic interest in the issue. For some time now, I've been troubled by the fatalities, police killings, and I really just have not had the time to get into it. But it is something that has concerned me for not just as a matter of police killings, but also the way in which the state is given towards authoritarian tendencies, and that is one of the manifestations of it. We have seen in the last few years, in particular under this administration, an increased use of militaristic tactics, including, for example, the military in policing. And that has concerned me in terms of the state of democracy in Jamaica. It concerns me in general in the world, any sort of move to increase war. Certainly in the Trump years, though he would have presented himself as a president of peace, there is a way that, and this is of course a long history of imperial interests, military threat in the Americas and the world. So it's just a long-standing concern of mine, but also I come to it from the perspective of just a concern for people's well-being and the people broadly.
Do you remember a time when the police force in Jamaica did not carry guns? I grew up in the 70s and the police officers carried clubs. They did not carry guns. So police officers, and Brother Akko was saying that your police department should be a civil group of people, because the requirement of a soldier is very different from the requirement, or ought to be, than a police officer. So in Belize, we had pushed back that they would have the Belize Defense Force be on the ground at checkpoints along with Belize police officers. And again, they have a very different mandate. And so, well, like what Brother Akko was sharing, that a number of our people in the security services throughout the Caribbean go get in training that the United States. And so this isn't really about the Caribbean politicians and people determining what's best as it relates to security, but really it's U.S. expansion of their interests in Caribbean territories, and then political leaders go along with it, and we the people, not organized or knowledgeable, for said this is not what's best for us and our communities. What's your take on political leadership in the Caribbean? Pretty much just to go along with U.S. interest in the region.
So if we go back before the independence period, this issue of violence in Caribbean experience is very long. Slavery was a violent institution. And so violence has been very, core to the way in which the Caribbean has been managed historically. And I think that we always have to bear that in mind in understanding how our systems of rule develop over time and how we carry the understandings from slavery and colonialism into the present in terms of the management of our people. So the US interest is a part of it, but I would say that to see it, in a bigger picture context of our history, there's a way that violence has been integral to the management of people of African descent in particular, in the Caribbean, in keeping them in their place, etc. Now, when it comes to, I have never not known the police to be armed, but they may not be heavily armed insofar as there was always a resource constraint. We have had histories of death squads in the post-independence period, so it's not new. I mean, they are not. The government is not claiming that this is the case. They are saying that they're just doing better policing and they're coming under fire, etc., which is a constant narrative around policing. There has been a period of decline in that sort of policing in Jamaica. In the 1990s, there was a period in which there was a tremendous focus on human rights interests, some of it coming from the international push, Amnesty International having some say. But what I would say broadly is that we have not come to the realization that at the core of our interactions with each other should be some measure of respect. And so levels of violence are high within the society, and that is used as a justification for police violence against the people. And of course, that has to do with global political economy, the kinds of economies that we are involved in. Jamaica is, of course, involved in transnational crime. It comes with violence, and that violence is often, turned inward on poor people in this country. But the state also plays a role in recreating forms of violence against those populations.
Echo. Your mic is off, Brother Echo.
Yeah. So I was saying, I'm off now. Yeah. I think Dr. Thame made a very important point about the kind of economy we have in the Caribbean, which I think you and I discussed a bit earlier, that there is structural inequality. And whenever you have economic inequality, there will be protests and so on as people try to eke out a living and live better lives. And rather than the state respond to these, what I call inequities through policy initiatives, what they are doing is characterizing these things as criminal. So protest is being criminalized, okay? Any kind of agitation for a better life is criminalized. And what has happened is that the police, rather than, as I indicated before, being a civil force, it is not being militarized, through the SWAT, and you see them all on the TV and they're dressed up like soldiers, And in addition to that, they are creating conditions like what is happening in El Salvador with what they call the state of exception, in which Bukele has basically, taken away people's rights. In Panama, as I indicated previously, there is suspension of what they call it, constitutional rights based on a protest by workers demanding justice from, I think it's Dolo Chiquita. And this sort of response to genuine demands for economic equality, social betterment, these things are seen as threats to the state, and therefore not to be solved by policy measures, but by military measures, brutalizing people. And it feeds into, as Dr. Thame said, our continuing history of violence in the Caribbean, you know? And we have to look at a new paradigm. We have to imagine different societies, you know, that do not have violence as the basis of a problem problem solving.
Well, I don't see Caribbean political leaders as people who are brave enough, courageous enough to put their people's best interests at heart and separate themselves from US ways of doing things and honoring their value. I don't see that to happen. So remember now, the enslavement of African people was by the leadership of countries. So even though the people in a political leadership look like us, their mindset is very European. They're deeply mentally enslaved. So I don't expect them, at least like CARICOM, for the most part, has never come up with policies and enforcement will better the majority of the people's lives in the country. So to me, as has often been the case, it's up to the people to save the people. It's up to the people to gain more knowledge, trial and error, unify across borders for our own liberation. So as to Ono really have any hope that political leaderships and other people in the status quo will come up with policy were extremely different from the United States and really in the best interest in the people in the Caribbean. Like, we keep looking to them, but they have never shown us that they're about our interests. Sister Dak, you, and then Brother Akko.
Yeah, that's an important point of reference. You know, what is their interest? Whose interest are they serving? And in the broader historical context, when we talk about the development of slavery as a system, it developed with capitalism, right? So you had capitalists investing, carrying out this system of trafficking and working people to death and with high levels of violence for profit. And ultimately, when you look at leadership, you know, around the world, all governments are operating some form of capitalist system. And our leadership sees themselves, you know, C.L.R. James made this critique of a leadership class in the Caribbean that said that they wanted, in Fanonian terms, to take the colonizers' place. They saw their interests as aligned with those elite capitalist frames. And so the state, the post-colonial state, became an agent of those interests, capital or otherwise the private sector, etc. And so the kind of social transformation that would deal with problems of inequality were, for the most part, not prioritized in Caribbean governance. There are moments in which it emerges, and it's not just a question of leadership, it's also about what the public is demanding. So the popular, the mass, the ways in which, for example, in the case of Jamaica and the Caribbean at large in the 1970s, there was a left, a political left that we could speak of. There was a national movement that we could speak of. There was popular engagement and demands for change that has been defeated, somewhat, internally generated. If we look at the case of Grenada, for example, and always in relation to the interests of the United States. In the case of Jamaica, the US presence and, interference in local politics would have been critical to defeating that left. And in the period thereafter, the question of alternatives just goes into the background. The public becomes less and less engaged. We also suffer from here, a crisis of undereducation in which people are in survival mode, which includes engagement in criminal economies. People are also not necessarily, with the level of political consciousness that they would have had in the past to make the sort of demands on governments that occurred. And in that frame, we're in this sort of period where the state is both less powerful because it defers to capital, and in another sense more powerful because the people are not organized and engaged and holding them to account. So it's a very difficult position that we are in the Caribbean presently, and it's hard to be optimistic, but I think the people have to take stock of themselves one way or the other and think through how it is that they're going to create the kinds of Caribbean states that would actually serve their interests. And it's not going to come without a struggle.
Respect. Brother Akko?
Yeah. The question you asked about our Caribbean leaders, and if I recall, I think the particular book that quote that Dr. Thame spoke about is from Party Politics in the West Indies, I think it is, in which C.L.R. James really chastised the leadership class of the Caribbean as a vacuous, imitated. Naipaul also scorned them as mimic men and mimic women. Fanon spoke about their betrayal, right, as a class. So it is not so much that we expect them to do anything. I don't expect them. That's why I was involved in the movement of change at the age of 18 or 19 years. We don't. But we have to engage in a discussion that the people understand the role of the government, the role of their leadership, because eventually the people are being swayed by some of these leaders to vote one way or the other, So we must be under, no doubt at all, any doubt that these people will never serve our interests. And it's not just in the Caribbean, it's the same thing in Africa. I was in a discussion a couple of weeks ago, and I made the point that these African leaders, not a single one of them was educated or influenced by African institutions. It's the same thing in the Caribbean. They are, as best call them, they're Afro-Saxons and Indo-Saxons. And they pursue interest alien to the people. I mean, one of the points that the Grenadian labor leader, anti-colonial fighter Marin made was the West Indies must be West Indian. And he was making a point that we have to look at our own approaches and indigenous methods. Our Caribbean leaders, the present crop and the past crops, most of them, with the exception of a few, their only idea of governance, of politics, of economics are the ones consistent with the metropolitan, whether it was Britain or the US or Canada, as the case may be. And to transform that, there has to be a level of consciousness which existed in the 1960s, into the 1970s, right? And to some extent, a little bit in the 1980s. What has happened since is that you have had what we in the movement is to analyze as the counterattack against this consciousness. And this current counterattack has replaced ideas of liberation, ideas of sovereignty, with ideas of individualism coming straight off the United States, right? Ideas of materialism, right? A deadly kind of materialism, selfishness, all of these things. And this is why earlier I said to you, when you look at it in terms of crime, a few of the bases of crime is economic inequality, also social dysfunction and cultural alienation. And those are the things that you are seeing happening in the Caribbean. And our leaders are not doing anything. And the last point I want to make is I was looking at a video, I think, on Kenya when Ruto was invited by Biden to the White House for a state visit. And the narrator is explaining all the things that are going to a state visit. And they look at what kind of food you like, all of every detail you could think about. And they asked him what kind of music he liked. And he said gospel music. An African leader is going to the White House, and it tells you the mindset that your indigenous music, right, does not have a place in a state visit. And it goes with the same thing with our food, with our, You look at the Caribbean leaders and African leaders, and you see any conference, and every one of them dress up in this Western coat and tie. As if it's any part of Europe. So we are culturally alienated at one end, and at the bottom end, we are imitating the culture of gangsterism. So every young man from Kingston to Trinidad, the pants on the butt, imitating some rapper, and these are the cultural problems and the cultural alienation that takes place in the Caribbean based on what Dr. Thame said, to miseducation, lack of education, and different kinds of literacy. And also another important point, and a European academic, he said it is no longer cognitive dissonance, it's cognitive warfare. They're actually waging cognitive warfare against our population to distort our vision, distort our realities, distort our very consciousness. And this is what, to some extent, we have to address from the ground up, where, conversations like these, and to try to reach our populations.
Thanks for that, Akko. We have to go to a break. When we come back, I definitely want to pick up on that. Because besides doing an analysis and sharing knowledge from different perspectives, we want people to be hopeful. We want to offer solutions. And what keeps coming up in a number of the public and private conversations I'm having is the need for us to be willing to learn and relearn, to connect with people who, that are a regular crew, who have different lived experiences and who genuinely have the interests of melanated people at heart. Keep in mind, all our skin folk aren't our kinfolk. Because when you look upon the political leadership and that the people vote them people in, one lot of them no prioritize we, them prioritize them and then people will loyal to them political parties. So we have to explore, going forward, looking forward for solutions, but how important it is getting knowledge, learning to listen, especially when they present than what you know or believe or what you agree with, but still staying present to listen, to think, especially when we're going to church, state school, and never teach you critical thinking. So the way we, besides having to acquire different and new knowledge and we learn, it's also about how our brain thinks, how it functions. How do we learn to work with people where might have some funky attitude, but they're really knowledgeable and they could help with? We need to break this down so as a people, we start coming up with our own solutions to hold ourselves accountable and the people were in a leadership regardless of the capacity. So we'll take one quick break. I'll come right back. Remember, our guest today is Sister Doc Maziki Thame, a senior lecturer in the Department of Government, USA, Mona. Co-host, revolutionary brother, Dr. Mutota out of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. We'll be right back.
Whether the job is big or small, every super handy dad needs the right tools. And at Brothers Habet and Habet, we have what you need. Enjoy super savings all June, like 15% off all power tools and hand tools, 25% off track car batteries, Eureka Vats, and Pisaforte towels, 25% off Penta Decon and discontinued colors, 30% off Valspar, and 40% off Dutch Boy paints. Plus, we're giving away $200 to 6 lucky super handy dads. Every $50 you spend gets you a chance to win. So this year, give Dad his best gift yet from Brothers Habet and Habet. Come in or reach out today. Happy Father's Day to all super handy dads.
I'm Randall Friesen and I manage Westwell Produce, better known as Granny's Foods. That's our main brand. So we offer high quality grains, beans, rice, and we also offer corn chips made from 100% locally grown corn. We saw a need for high quality, locally produced products. A lot of the best products are being exported, and we said, we need to keep some of the best products here in Belize rather than export everything. Atlantic Bank has helped us achieve our goals by providing the financing for us to be able to launch products faster than we would without the financing that they offer. We find that Atlantic Bank is very customer friendly, especially with small and medium-sized businesses. We find that Atlantic Bank is more than willing to go the extra mile. They try to understand your business. So when we go to Atlantic Bank with a certain need, we find that they try to develop a solution that will meet our specific need. I would encourage any small business owner to go to Atlantic Bank for their financial services. They're very friendly, and just overall, their service is excellent.
Let's take a journey through the core functions of the Social Security Board. It all starts with registering as an insured person, employer, or self-employed individual. Sign up for a portal account to manage your Social Security information online. Just provide accurate information and click Create. This will give you access to a range of services and benefits. Next, your contribution, along with investments and other income, are collected and distributed into 3 funds. This ensures that the SSB fund is securely utilized to support various benefit programs. The SSB is committed to providing essential benefits such as sickness, maternity, injury, and pension. These benefits are paid out to eligible individuals as a part of the Social Security coverage. We help you navigate through life's challenges with financial security. Annual surplus accumulates to grow the fund each year. This surplus is invested into various industries, contributing to the growth and development of our nation. With each passing year, the fund continues to grow due to the annual surplus and interest revenue earned from prudent investments. This surplus, along with reserves, helps to bolster the SSB fund and provide a safety net for those in need. We've arrived at the end of our journey to better understanding how the SSB works. We remain committed to serving you and building a secure future for all Belizeans.
Tired of appliances that just don't last? Appliances that just can't keep up? It's time for a change. GE Appliances delivers reliability, innovation, and performance you can trust. The decision is easy. Don't settle for less. Choose quality, choose reliability, choose GE.
Guatemala, this a VTA, we don't fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me, my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad, bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. This a VTA, we don't fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a VTA, we don't fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me, my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad, bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. This a VTA, we don't fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a VTA, we don't fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me, my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad, bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. All people who love them country bad, bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad, bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. This a VTA, we don't fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a VTA, we don't fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me, my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master.
Welcome back to Sunday Review. So our last segment, we're having a conversation about militarization in the Caribbean. And we have our guest, Sister Doc Maziki Thame senior lecturer in the Department of Government at UWI, Mona, brother Akka Mutota, and I had, we had a juicy conversation. Sister Doc never even listen would I say anything else, so I definitely want to hear your 2 cents. When looking at solutions, oftentimes because in many Caribbean countries, they never have no serious decolonization process. Many of us are still deeply mentally enslaved with European worldview, religious beliefs, just about everything, and have no interest in learning other ways of being that may be African or indigenous and would work better for us than what we're doing right now. And so we oftentimes people with colonial papers that I call degrees are usually looked at as the experts, and that they know best, and that they inform the policy. And then you have everyday people. Look at Brother Akko. He's definitely a grassroots intellectual. He tell me something new today. QBE, qualified by experience. So you have a lot of certified people. Clearly it hasn't worked for us because look where we are as a people in the Caribbean. And so I wanted to know your take, Sister Doc, on from the bottom up within communities, looking at other models of learning and building knowledge we come up with solutions in our best interests.
I think that there always has to be a caveat with bottom up. Bottom up can also be problematic, right? We see, for example, in America, the rise of the MAGA base as right-wing populist white supremacists, but it's bottom up in a sense, right? And I think that, you were talking about the title given to Akko, but when you were introducing him, you referred to him as a revolutionary. And I think that it's revolutionary thinking more than anything else that matters in terms of creating the kind of change that would, be more egalitarian, would center people, and that those frames of individualism, materialism, etc., are very strong at the bottom. And we therefore have to critique what that means for us as Caribbean people, as human beings in the world, and to think therefore from that basis of, what are the values that you want to use to build a society? What is the alternative to the individual? How do you balance collective interests with individuals, having a sense of freedom? And particularly coming from our history in the Caribbean, as people enslaved have value systems that are anti-Black, and that anti-Blackness maintains a very powerful place in our societies, including in terms of the levels of violence that we accept in our society and that are used to keep people, in place at the bottom and deprived. So that, for me, that is at the core of what would make the difference in leadership, whether we could have leadership that thinks from revolutionary perspectives, that questions, in the first place, what is in our best interest. And then when it comes to the circulation of ideas within a Black diaspora, for example, Akko referenced a kind of, imperialism of American music, etc. But I like to think about the Black experience as more interconnected, as having a circulation of ideas coming from the US. So the US is not just American government in terms of its role in our lives, right? It's also people of African descent in the United States. It's, what's happening in Brazil and how people are mobilizing. We are operating in different language groups, but there's something to be learned. It's the Haitian Revolution and its particular resonance over time and space that said Black people must have dignity, Black people must be free. And how do you create that kind of reality, right? I think history is a very good teacher. I think we have icons in our history, Garvey and Garvey's philosophy, that could be foundational to thinking about how to create these Caribbean societies differently. But even before we got here to the Caribbean, to think about what kept African societies harmonious. And what kind of philosophical frames, what kinds of questions were they asking about how to treat each other? You know, in the case of South Africa, they resurrected the notion of Ubuntu in the post-apartheid period. We could say it has failed, but nonetheless, you know, there's a way that they draw on their histories and their knowledge that spoke to how you protect human life, how you protect the environment, how you create a world in which we are in some kind of harmony with the environment rather than simply exploiting, extracting, seeking profit, and by extension, also just killing human beings and, you know, the life around us.
Big respect to that. The revolutionary thinking, which for me would be awareness of self as a spirit having an African woman experience and knowing our stories as the first people on planet Earth and why it's called Mama Earth because they're living relatives. Everything is a part of us, but it's the European mindset primarily about domination over everything and control and exploitation. Brother Akko, so yes, I'm definitely with you, Sister Doc, on that's a part of the rethinking or the liberation of our mind is revolutionaries to look at something differently and be willing to struggle to bring that into reality. Brother Akko, I can hear your 2 cents from what Sister Doc just say and how it is that we're going to make this transition because, you know, we could come here and talk every Sunday, which, you know, we have a lot of armchair revolutionaries. We could do a lot of talking. Sunday Review not known for that. We really look for people. I prefer scholar activists. Yeah, we need poor academician, but I appreciate people who use what in the top boy in the classroom, pan the ground in a meaningful way. And so yeah, that are my 2 cents, Brother Akko.
Yeah, the most important word among the many important words she said, I think for me, was the word revolution. And it is my entrance to politics. I never conceptualized politics outside of the revolutionary framework. When I got involved in politics as a teenager, the guiding document from the organization that we had, the National Joint Action Committee, was a book called Conventional Politics or Revolution, in which it analyzed the electoral political system as an inadequate system that needed to be destroyed and to be transformed in a way that it gives revolutionary impulse to the society and to the nation. And so the world revolution is very much, to some extent, feared. No, that's why in so many instances, when people ask me what is the solution or what should we do, I quote Bob Marley. Bob Marley said the only solution is a revolution. And we have to return to those kinds of thinking, right? Radical, as some of the theologians like to call it, a radical consciousness. You know, we have consciousness of some issues, yes, but in theological terms, they speak of this radical consciousness. And we have to return to a radical consciousness, which is a revolutionary consciousness. That's where I think our solution is. We know that this system has failed. Not only in its historical context in which it brought us to these parts of the world as enslaved people, but in its destruction of the environment, right? In its destruction of other global communities, extermination of people, the extermination of plant, animal, life itself, right? The whole extractivist model, right, which has polluted rivers and, so we need something diametrically opposed to this model. And the only thing that is diametrically opposed to that model is a revolutionary model. It is one of the statements the late Comrade Fidel always said, we must imagine a different world. And to imagine a different world is to think differently and to think in a revolutionary way, and that is ultimately the solution. We have to create revolutionary movements. Now, we see revolution as just violent, and that doesn't mean it is violent, right? That doesn't mean a revolution has to be, killing people and so on. You know, it begins with thinking. It begins with a new philosophical approach. It begins with deconstructing ideas and reconstructing new ideas. So that to me is the basis of change. I have never been hopeless because I believe that, you know, this is just a phase that we are going through. Difficult, challenging. And this is why in so many instances I quote Gramsci a lot. This famous quote Gramsci made about the old world is dying, the new world is being born. It's a time of monsters. You know, deformities. And what of some of the things we are seeing here are actually political and social deformities. That is emerging as this world is dying. So it is trying to make us hopeless because of the bile and the destructiveness that is happening. But in the practice of that genocide and destruction, if we can see inside the storm, we will understand that something new is emerging. And that is the revolutionary process that is taking place as we speak. You're muted.
Sorry, thanks. Before we close up, a big part of that would be knowledge sharing. With church state systems, which they're not try teaching nothing revolutionary, and with social media, and I know one of our brother Akko thing is we have to work with young people. How do we connect with young people in a primarily come out of one church state system, in one church state system of miseducation, and with social media constantly with narratives? When I affirm we as melanated people for make we feel that we even have it in a we for come up with these solutions. How do we counter that? Sister Daka and Brother Akko.
You know, just to kind of connect something you had said earlier with what Akko said before, but I'll come to your specific question, but you reference yourself as a woman, you know, with a particular set of knowledge about being a woman. And I think that the time in which revolution was understood as militarized action is, well, you know, time changes, but that is not the moment presently. It's about thinking from the perspective even of the woman's experience, as even in the context of revolution, she would have been oppressed historically. So that sort of knowledge, to hear those experiences that might have been silenced in the past, voiced now, I think that's an important reference point. And to locate ourselves in that kind of way, I really appreciate hearing you bring that to the discourse. Now, as it relates to, you know, where young people are at and engaging them in creating alternative futures, I think that there are ways that they are thinking differently already, right? That we should acknowledge that they are questioning in ways that we may not have. For example, on questions of work and whether they should be wedded to employment in the same kind of way. It's a kind of blow at capitalism, right? In that they're not going to let the system kill them. But for me, all politics is local, which means meeting people where they are at, which means having them begin to think about what their daily struggles imply for how to organize themselves, you know, into action. And that sort of organizing, that sort of actioning is for me hopeful. You know, when I am engaged in political action, that is when I think I am most optimistic. So to do something to, you know, and that something doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, in the broader electoral frame, because change happens where we are organizing. So whether it be in the workplace, whether it be in the home, in the interpersonal relationships that occur there, but ultimately centering a kind of value that has to do with just respect for each other, respect for the environment, respect for Earth, as a way to frame our politics. And to, as I heard this young man say, believe in life. You know, if you want to believe in life, you will have hope. So it's just to organize that, just to organize what people are doing already or what people are questioning already, what they're experiencing already into forms of political action. And so, you know, everybody you meet every day, I mean, I do it with my child, I do it with her peers, just push them to question and to think about, okay, how would you organize to respond to this particular situation? And of course, with my students and those that I encounter in general.
Big thanks, sis, and I appreciate the reminder because, at least for me, I know I don't think enough about how much this other generation has already changed. So the fact that you have used to say, man, my hair not got nothing to do with how I land. Why only they press me, but my hair I forgot at school? That they definitely express themselves differently. For a lot of people, it's like they're very disrespectful. But if we really give them the space, like listen to what they say, indeed, they are revolutionary in questioning authority. Whereas we would have been like grumbling with Breddah and not even said anything that to an elder. So I really appreciate you reminding me, this is how I read it, that changes are already taking place. It's just sometimes that we don't recognize it as revolutionary change, and that young people that didn't changes. Like, you know, this work-life balance, like, no, I don't make for no work for all the years and retire. No, me, I don't cut for that. But I hustle and be free.
I don't know if it's revolutionary yet. We will see. But, you know, we as elders certainly should continue to engage them and to push back sometimes when they think they know already.
Respect. Brother Akko? Brother Akko?
So,
mic not on? Oh, there
yeah,
you
my mic should be on. So my response would be, we have to, it's something Nathan McCall, when he did his first book signing years ago in my store, and in a question came out of the audience, and we asked every generation. This was in 1990, so this is like almost 30 years ago. So every generation has asked the same question: are we making progress? We don't think we're making progress. And he said yes. He said we have to develop different barometers to measure progress, which is what I think Dr. Thame alluded to, or what revolution is. You know, I tell people this because Fidel went up in the hills and the Sierra Maestra and waged a battle from the hills, and everybody believed that has to be the model to wage a revolution. Well, no, they have heat-seeking devices that's going to be able to stay up in the air there and find you. You know what I mean? So we have to evolve. And just how we evolve in so many things, in terms of measuring our progress, we also have to evolve different barometers of measuring our progress, you know. And you can see that into what usually a lot of things that people see as rebelliousness, you know, is sometimes caused by an understanding of certain things. Because rebellion is also a phase of a revolutionary process, right? We were taught there were basic phases. One was the militant period, the rebellious period, the militant period, and the revolutionary period. So rebelliousness is part of the political and social process of revolution, right? And as Dr. Thame said, we have to find a way to organize it, right? That's critical because we have fallen short on organizing. Right? Our ancestors, like Garvey and others, did a better job, in my view, of organizing. And we have not found the medium, or if you want to call it the alchemy, if you want to call it that, to organize people to advance the cause that we believe in. And I think that is part of the challenge. As Fanon said, each generation has a challenge, right? It must discover its mission. Out of relative obscurity, discover that mission. Our mission, to me, is how do we discover the methodologies, the alchemy of organizing? Because there is a rebellion. There's a mass rebellion taking place. It is not organized. And we have to find a way to organize it into a potent revolutionary force.
Big respect for the conversation this morning. Doctor, I started have to put on my glasses for seeing your Sister Doc. Sister Doc Maziki Thame, a senior lecturer in the Department of Government, UWI Mona. We value the sacrifice you made for dealing with today. And I know you want to get back to your family. You got people who you love the healing up the Jamaica. So thanks for the time we take. Thanks, Brother Akko, as usual, for your words of wisdom and your memory of what's happening in the Caribbean. Big thanks for the reasoning today. This show will repeat at 5:30 Belize time today. We want to thank the security guard Shane Flowers, the technical director at XTV, Belizean artist Alexi Bilal. Alexi is bad on painting. Young black youth, proud of Alexi. And then downstairs at Crumb Radio, senior technician Tony G. So I want to thank Belizeans for tuning in. Whenever share this link, you go to XTV Belize YouTube, XTV Belize Facebook page. Big thanks again, Sister Doc. Thanks, Brother Akko. Until next Sunday, honor the people and save the people.
Guatemala, this a GTA, we don't figure. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland.